Hey guys, I got into a very interesting conversation on Facebook about a day ago with a brother who asked a very awesome question, and I gave him my answer. And I asked him if it was okay if I would make a video on it, and he said sure. So let's knock three times and let's get it started. Hey guys, it's Z back with another episode of Observant Freemasonry, and today we are talking about a question and answer series that I got into with a brother who asked a very awesome question on Facebook. And I thought that maybe the answers that I gave him would make a good video. And so the question was, how do we get the younger generation of Masons to kind of bridge the gap with the older generation of Masons? And I said, hey, I think that's actually the problem is that what we're doing is we're asking the younger Masons to bridge the gap with the older Masons. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. When we take in a new Mason, we are asking them to do an awful lot from the very beginning. We're asking for them to learn catechism. And your jurisdiction, maybe they have to, in ours, I know they have to stand it in open lodge, which is a great amount of pressure on a lot of people. We're asking them to take the lessons of Freemasonry and apply it to their life. We're asking that they reflect on their life and say, okay, this is how I can make it better next time. We're asking for their family to be understanding of the amount of time that's required for Freemasonry. We're asking probably his family to come to events. We're asking for like a pretty significant life change if we're doing Freemasonry correctly. And that's a lot of work, right? Now, fortunately for me as an older Mason in my lodge, I've been in Masonry since 2009. So we're talking about 14 years-ish or so. I don't have those problems anymore. My wife is very understanding and very loving of the amount of time that Masonry takes in my life. And I'm very thankful and very blessed by that. But I don't have to worry about the catechism. I don't have to worry about remembering which Dewgarden sign and which degree. And if I come in late, what am I supposed to do? And what's the lodge etiquette? How many times did that guy rap? Am I supposed to stand up now or do I sit down? When does the flag go? No, when do we sit back down? Okay, what am I supposed to wear? When is meeting starting? Like, I don't have to worry about any of that. For me, I already know, right? It's when I go to lodge meetings, I'm not stressed out at all. Like I go and have a great time because I already know what's getting ready to happen. So if I'm stress-free when I'm at lodge meetings, why don't I go over to those younger Masons and say like, hey man, how can I help you out? How can I make this a really good time for you? Because I know you're stressed out probably because of the catechism and trying to apply the lessons. And maybe your family, who lovingly said, we'd love for him to become a Freemason, starts realizing that there's a lot of time. Maybe there's some issues at home with that, right? And he's trying to work through this, right? I know he's under a lot of stress. Why don't I go help him? He's my brother. I know he's my brother, right? Isn't that what brothers do? So here's three things that I recommend for anyone who's a worshipful master, maybe studying to become a worshipful master, or you're just an older member and you're like, hey, that's not a bad idea. Let's try this. Number one, I always assign younger Masons with a kind of like middle time period Mason and like a past master for my investigating committees. I think that this is a great way to kind of help kind of bridge gaps together, right? So when I do that Mason that's been around for a while, not necessarily not the past master, but maybe a while, right? I always assign him as my point of contact. He is the guy that I'm going to talk to make sure that everything's going. Now, when I assign that, I say, but you do have a past master that is assigned that is to be there to be your guide. And I take a look at my past masters and say, past masters, you are not to do the work. You are there to help guide and mentor, right? And hopefully that's what they're doing. I'm taking a lot of responsibility off the past masters and putting it onto those Masons that maybe one day will want to ascend to the East, I'm hoping. But at the same time, I'm also bringing in that brand new Mason and saying, hey, you're still part of this lodge. Let's all work together. I'm not hanging him out until he's proven himself to be a Mason, right? I'm assuming that from the beginning he is, right? That's a really great way to do that. Or if you're establishing other committees, make sure that you're putting those younger Masons on those committees with those older Masons, and let your older Masons know, hey, older Mason, I need you to talk with them. Like, I need you to help guide them. I need you to help mentor them. They probably will be too nervous to say anything. And that's why I need you to be the guy that's going to sit there and say, hey, let me help you out, right? Don't necessarily wait for him to ask. So that's a really great way to help bridge that gap. Number two, when we are obligating a brethren in my lodge, every Mason in that lodge comes and surrounds that Mason while we are obligating them. Now, this is a huge one, and I love doing it. Back, my first tenure as worshipful master, we didn't do it. We just kind of had everyone stand up on the sidelines, and they came down one step if they were up one step. But when I came back again to work as a worshipful master, I said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're surrounding this guy, right? So as the moment that he's brought to light and he looks up, he sees the eyes of every single brother in that room looking at him. And I can tell you what, that can absolutely be nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it can absolutely be one of the most reassuring things, knowing that you are in a brotherhood with people around you who are concerned about you. Also, it also puts my older members right there so that they have that connection with that Mason that they just saw obligated. And I can tell you what, you being 10 feet away from that obligation or you being right there when that obligation is happening makes a big difference. If you don't do that in your lodge, I highly recommend you give it a try a couple of times. Now, there is probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve in your lodge if you're not used to it, right? But you explain, hey, when we wrap up the lodge for the obligation, I want all of you down, which you should be anyway because you're marshaling the line, but I want you to surround that candidate. I want him to look up and know that he's in a brotherhood. And you'll see the difference, especially even in your older members when they're back in there and they're that close to that obligation, that newly obligated brother. It's really awesome. So the third thing that's really kind of one of those things that kind of breaks my heart, and I know is a great way that we can kind of bridge the gap between the older Masons and the younger Masons, is that when you are done a degree, make sure that you have one of those older Masons sitting on the sideline in that very front row with an empty seat next to him, right? And let that older Mason know it's your responsibility. And this is what I mean. How many times have you been in a lodge meeting, the degree just got done, and the worshipful master says you may now have a seat on the sideline amongst your brethren and see us close the lodge. And then all of a sudden you see this brand new Mason and he's looking around going like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go? Like, are we waiting? Is there someone going to tell me what to do? Because remember, up until that point, they've pretty much been directed. Like they had someone holding their hand kind of thing. And now we're just kind of like, all right, go do it yourself. Right? Have that older master Mason or that older master Mason going like, hey, come here, come sit with me. Sit right next to you. I do that in lodge all the time. In fact, I've been in lodges where that entered apprentice degree was happening and I knew it was getting ready to go. And I had a brother right next to me as we're sitting and talking and we're doing everything. We're going through the degree work and everything else. And I go, hey, dude, scoot over. That's where he's going to sit. And that worshipful master says, you may now have a seat amongst the brethren. And I go, hey, come here, sit right here. Right? And I go, hey, man, I'm Z. Nice to meet you. Congratulations on becoming a Mason. Just follow me, man. We're going to do this together, right? Just follow everything I do and we'll take care of you. And, I go, hey, man, that's that one rap, that calls up that individual brother, right? Those 2 raps, that's the officers. 3, everybody stands up. 1, we sit back down. You good? Just follow me on the Dew Garden signs, man. I know you don't know what you're doing yet, but we'll get you through and we'll make that happen. Right? We as older Masons, not necessarily just past masters, we as older master Masons should be doing that for our younger Masons. And if you're not, start doing it, man. It makes a huge difference. Remember that those younger Masons that we're bringing in are the future of Masonry. And if we don't make connections with them, Freemasonry dies, right? The things that we did in 2009 or before, if you're an older Mason than me, don't work today. It's not the same culture. It's not the same society. So we have to make sure that we, as older Masons, knowing the value of Masonry, connect with the younger Masons, and we make sure that we get their input. We make them feel part of our brotherhood so that we can continue Masonry for generation to generation to generation. That's what we do as older Masons. So until next time, stay fervent.